Hi, my name is Emma. Welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the fiber art activities that I get up to. There's a lot of sewing and knitting that keeps me busy, and I'm very glad to have somebody to talk to in depth about all of it. I think that YouTube is an awesome platform for creatives like myself who maybe don't have a lot of people in our real life that enjoy listening to us ramble for 30-40 minutes about our latest cast-ons or our indecision on what to cast on next, or does this mohair match this yarn? I don't know. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being that person for me. I appreciate you. So first up, for finished objects, I actually do have a couple because it's been like 5 weeks since I last filmed, so sorry about that. My first one is what I'm wearing. This is my Monday sweater by PETITEKNIT, and I was not able to meet gauge with the recommended yarn, so I wound up sizing up in yarn to a, it's a worsted weight, but I think it's kind of a light worsted weight. It is Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool, and it's just held by itself, so it's not the softest. There's no mohair. It's a tiny bit prickly, but after I got used to it around my neck, it no longer bothered me. And I just love the color and all the details. You've got awesome German short rows here and the cuffs, and it's just beautiful. I finished this maybe 2 weeks ago, and I have worn it countless times since, as the weather progressively gets worse here in northern PA. I typically struggle pretty hard with the transition into winter. I'm a summer girly. I like the sun, being outside. It gets depressing for me in the winter, and the fall is just like, oh, winter's coming. It's coming. It's gonna be here. It's gonna be cold and miserable. So really focusing on my knitting has really been helping me so far this year. So I hope that it is helping you if you struggle with the transition into winter too. So I've been thrilled with the colder days that I'm able to wear this, surprisingly. I don't even believe I'm saying that, but I'm enjoying the colder days. Maybe even keeping my house intentionally a little chillier so I can wear it. Shh. So that is my first finished object. I also casted off my Oslo hat, also by PETITEKNIT. I'm sorry guys. PETITEKNIT's patterns are just awesome. They have a lot of details and links to videos if you're just learning techniques, and I think probably the best thing about them is that they are so popular, because then you can see other people's projects and see what they've made and get different yarn substitutions, and even be able to see, you know, like little tips and tricks, and I struggled here and this is what I did. So this is my Oslo hat by PETITEKNIT. It is a wool and cotton blend. I'm completely blanking on the yarn brand right now, but I just got it at Joann because I wanted to have a affordable yarn that did have natural fibers, it's wool and cotton, and that I would be able to test this pattern and see if I liked it. Because if you're familiar with the Oslo hat at all, or if you're not, it takes a lot of yarn. Like, this is double folded stockinette, and then it's knit and turned, and the brim folds up. So all in all, it's probably a good 12 inches of just stockinette, not counting the crown. But I love it. It is that, bangs, is that classic Carhartt beanie vibe, and I was very happy with the experience, and I obviously have cast on more of them. But we'll talk about that in the whips, what I have going for Oslo hats. And then I knit my husband an Oslo hat out of Knitting for Olive. I think this is Thunder. think it's called Thunder or Storm, but I'm pretty sure it's Thunder. This is their fingering weight merino held double to make that DK gauge that the Oslo hat calls for. And it fits me because we have very similar head sizes, and it's just so nice. I made his a little bit shallower because he's not a fan of the poof. He wants to just be able to pull it down tight around his ears and have no poof. So that is his Oslo hat. And honestly, he would like it to be a little bit tighter, but he's not a fan of a ribbed hat, really. So I'm sizing down and making him another one because this yarn grew a lot in the blocking process. You have to handle it really carefully or it will grow a lot. So what fit him perfectly before blocking became way oversized after blocking. So I wound up doing a little bit of research. I reblocked it and it was still larger than he wanted. So I blocked it in hot water and intentionally filtered it a little bit, and it had shrunk down to a very usable size for him or myself. I'm probably gonna wind up keeping it because I love it. And you need a neutral beanie. I mean, this is a great color, but having a neutral one, yes, please. So it's a little bit felted, just a little bit, like you can hardly tell. I just think with it being fingering weight and 100% merino wool that I would struggle a little bit to frog it back. And I don't want to risk losing the wool or damaging it because it's perfectly fine. I'm just going to leave it as is. And I have another one cast on for him, which I'll show you too. I struggled so hard to get this completely finished. This is my Lakes pullover by Ozetta. And this was nothing more than a swatch in my last video. So I am thrilled with the progress I was able to make on this, but it is technically not finished. I did maybe half an hour ago finish the folded over neckline here, and it is gorgeous and I am so happy with how it turned out. But I still have to weave in the ends, I still have to block it, so therefore I cannot really consider it a finished object. But for all intents and purposes, it's finished. But these saddles, they need to block out and relax, and all the ribbing, it's gorgeous. And I'm very excited to wear this muted chocolate brown heathered sweater. I think it's just going to be a complete staple for me this year. This is knit out of a very glorious combination. Let me see if it will focus on the fuzz. You can see that awesome halo. That is alpaca silk. It is Drops alpaca silk. Just so floofy. So that is held with Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool again. This is the color Brown Heather, I believe. Yes, Brown Heather. And that this comes in 465 yards to 227 grams. It's considered a worsted weight, 16 stitch per 4-inch gauge. But I'm an extremely tight knitter, so I met gauge held double on 5mm needles to pattern specifications. I cannot believe that I have 2 sweaters finished. It just has to have the ends woven in and block, which I really need to get some official blocking mats, but we'll get there. Next for work in progress is another Oslo hat. So this is that replacement hat for my husband. The ends curl so bad on just straight stockinette. But this is, there it goes. So knitting for Olive, merino, fingering weight held double, and that is in the color pomegranate. And then if you remember from last time, I have a pair of socks that I am knitting 2 at a time, but on shorty needles, the Chiagu 9-inch circulars. So I have made some progress since last time. I'm almost to the point where I would want to split for the heel flap and turn and do the gusset and all that. But I don't really like my socks to be terribly long, so I probably will do that shortly. But these are kind of my on-the-go project, waiting for appointments, that kind of thing, going out somewhere that I want to bring a little bit of knitting. These or a hat are my go-to for that typically. Okay, and I have one last work in progress. This is that yarn that I made the first Oslo hat out of. I had it out left, and I have a 1-year-old nephew that he needs a new Auntie M hat for Christmas. So this is all I have for progress on that toddler Oslo hat. I am hoping it's not going to be too big. It's the size specified for his head circumference, but straight stockinette hats always just look so large to me, as I'm just so used to like negative ease of a ribbed hat, because that's what I used to always like buy at your big box stores and stuff. So stockinette hats they just appear larger. So I'm always like, oh my gosh, it's too big. But then it fits perfectly. So trust the process and trust the designers and trust the measurements as long as you meet gauge. If you are not meeting gauge, it is not the designer's fault that your hat is 4 times too big. You need to at least check your gauge as you're working. Like, I understand by the time you knit a gauge swatch on a hat, you might as well have knit a quarter of the hat, right? But you can still pretty accurately get a gauge check on your hat as you've knit it. And it should be blocked. Yes, it should be blocked, but that will at least give you a frame of reference for if you're drastically too big or too small, and then you can steam block it and get a better idea without having to take the time to knit the 4x4 square, because that can take an hour or so. And if you're like me, you're knitting into the nooks and crannies of your very busy life, and sometimes you just want to skip the gauge swatching, but you can still check your gauge as you go and make adjustments as needed. Because I would rather pull out a couple of inches of hat that I realize is way too small or too big than to spend an hour gauge swatching for a hat. I don't gauge swatch for hats or socks. I probably should, but I don't. So I think that's it for works in progress. I did have another completed object, another Oslo hat for my youngest. The request was a pink and blue hat, and we went on Knitting for Olive, and the colors were picked. This is Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Flamingo, and this is Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Poppy Blue. And these looked great together. What I did was I did the brim, top, and underside in the solid blue, and then I held a strand of the Flamingo and a strand of the Poppy Blue together to marl the body of the hat. And it was so stinking cute. I loved it. But it was like 3 sizes too big for my youngest, and I was like, what the heck happened? And then I realized I'd accidentally grabbed the wrong needles, and I knit the whole stinking hat in 2 sizes bigger needles. Ugh. Make notes. I don't care if it's a post-it note, if it's on the back of the pattern, if it's on your notes app in your phone, make notes. I wasted a week of pretty monogamous knitting on this hat for my child that has been, Mama, where's my hat? Mama, where's my hat? Mama, are you making me a hat? It was just so depressing to realize after I blocked this hat what had happened. Then I had to pull it all back, and I have not had the heart to restart it. But now that I'm done my Ozetta sweater, I'm going to restart it because my little one is very excited for a hat. So that is the sad saga of taking notes to prevent yourself this heartache. It sounds dramatic. It really does. I get it. It sounds dramatic, but it was just so depressing to me to realize what had happened and that I was gonna have to do it all over again because I've got 2 kids I want to make hats for. There's one of them. Not sure where I got cut off. I had to go help my youngest get a snack. Never ends. But I was saying that I have all these projects, especially with Christmas in less than 50 days, 45 days maybe. And I want to make a hat for both my kids. I want to make a proper fitting hat for my husband. I have a niece, a nephew, and another nephew on the way I would like to make hats for. I have a sister and a best friend I would like to make socks for. And I want to finish these socks for myself. It's like to put that much time into this hat and have it be wrong just was so sad to me. I don't think I knitted all the rest of the day once I figured that out. So take notes, write it down, make some sort of physical written down or typed out documentation of what you've done for your project, anything that's not quite to pattern. It's like for my Ozetta sweater, my stitch gauge was perfect, but my row gauge was much longer. So thankfully in her pattern, she gives the row, she says like knit 10 rows or 4 inches or whatever. But she also tells you how many rows and how many inches to knit. So I was able to make adjustments. But if I didn't know that my row gauge was different, my saddles specifically would have wound up being like out to here if I didn't know that my row gauge was different and to make adjustments for that. And then that would have brought out my drop shoulder on the Ozetta sweater so wide. I would have used a lot more yarn. It would have given me a much bigger bust circumference, and I probably wouldn't love the finished product. And that would have been my fault. So check your gauge, know your gauge, make notes, don't be like me. So technically these were acquisitions, a work in progress, and a finished object. And now they're a start over project. This is another color that is in my acquisitions, the Knitting for Olive Merino Pomegranate. That was in that order. And then I have a whole ball left of the Thundercloud Merino that I used for that Ozetta hat. So I have a whole ball left of that. And also in that order, I got myself a whole bunch of Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino in the color, I think it's Terracotta Rose. So I have not worked with Knitting for Olive's Cotton Merino before, but I really want to make this into, I got like 10 balls or something like that. So I'm hoping that I can make a Cumulus Tee by PETITEKNIT. And I'm also hoping that I have enough to make a tank number 5, I think it is, by My Favorite Things Knitwear, because I just love this color. I think that will be something that I reach for a lot. Then Knit Picks had a sale on their Wool of the Andes. So I went a little bit crazy and got these 3 colors. This one is for myself. It is going to be a Salty Days sweater by Kotova Kika on YouTube. Veronica Lindenberg. Not sure there, but I'll put links to everything below. And this is the color Moral. It is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Peruvian Highland wool. And it is a worsted weight, but I do not meet worsted weight gauge with it. So in order to knit the Salty Days sweater with this, I have ordered a mohair to go with it. Actually, I haven't ordered it yet. I haven't picked it out. I'm going to order it. It's from Knitting for Olive, and I think it's going to be a really good color match, but I'll let you know when it gets here. So I got 14 skeins of that for myself. I know I won't need 14 skeins, but especially with like shipping and everything, you want to make the most of it. And I love the colors, so I'm excited to have some of it on hand. And then my youngest son has been begging me for a sweater, and he picked out the color Tranquil. It's kind of like a minty sea green. It's very nice. And he's a dark blonde, so I think this will look good on him. So I'm excited about that. But I did wind up having to order a mohair for that as well to meet gauge for the Monday Sweater Junior by PETITEKNIT. Is what I'm going to do. So the mohair for that is on the way and should be here soon. And then that will be a work in progress on my next video. If not a finished object, that would be cool. And then my oldest son, he's 10, picked out a color and he picked Phoenix Red, which I think is just a really great red. And he is a brunette with hazel eyes. His hair is lighter than mine, a little bit lighter than mine, with hazel eyes, and I think this is gonna look great on him. He also is the one that picked out this color for his hat, but it's being redistributed and I'm gonna have to repurchase it because he's not at home right now. He's at his dad's for a while, so I have a little bit of time on his hat and I'm taking advantage of it. But I have a few more things on order that will be in my acquisitions in my next video, and I am so excited to get started on all these projects. I feel like I've been working on this sweater and my Ozetta sweater for a long time, and it'll be really satisfying to blow through hat after hat after hat. So I think that is everything for me. I have just been really leaning into the cozy, relaxing with a cup of coffee or tea and my knitting. Normally I would pick up a book to read, but I think I kind of got a little bit burnt out on reading. I've read maybe 120, 25, 30 books so far this year, and I just got a little bit burnt out, I think. And I've been really leaning into watching Gilmore Girls. I have seen it all the way through once before, including the Year in the Life, and this is only my second time watching it, so it's been really nice. I'll pop it up on my iPad or on the TV at night after the kids go to bed and just enjoy knitting through a little bit of Gilmore Girls. And I think that kind of started, I don't think I started doing that because I was burnt out on reading. I think I kind of became a little burnt out on reading after I realized how much fun I was having watching Gilmore Girls and knitting because of this sweater. Now this sweater is shocking how much back and forth and back and forth and back and forth knitting it is. It's not all in the round like a raglan. You have to knit. The saddles are knit separately. They're knit back and forth. And then you work the back yoke back and forth to like down to here. And then you knit this side and then you knit this side and then you combine them and then you knit down, and it's all back and forth. Like 3/4 of this sweater, it feels like, has been back and forth. Okay, not the sweater because if you're including the sleeves. 3/4 of the body has been knit back and forth. And I was having a really hard time getting the second strand of the alpaca silk to pick up. Like I would occasionally miss it on the purl row. And so I would just have a floating stitch of the alpaca silk that I would have to pick back up or tank back or frog back. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this because I'm fully capable of knitting without looking, purling without looking. But the double stranded with the alpaca silk, it was just on the purl rows, it just was dangerous. And I couldn't keep wasting that time anymore. So I was like, okay, I cannot read while I knit this sweater. So I started watching Gilmore Girls. And then I kind of got hooked and kind of realized it was like 3 days until I picked up a book. But I have read 2 books in the last 2 weeks, maybe about a week a book, which is a long while for me, but a perfectly respectable pace. I don't need to rush through books because chances are I won't remember it anyway. But I have read 2 books by Lila Sage, Done and Dusted, and then the second one is Swift and Saddled, and the third one just came out. I have borrowed them from Libby to read on my Kindle, and I'm able to read on my Kindle a little bit easier while I'm knitting, so that has worked out okay, and I really enjoyed them. They are very reminiscent to me of like the Elsie Silver books, a little bit like a westerny on a ranch kind of vibe book. And if you just like good characters, a good story, and of course romance, then I suggest you check them out. I really enjoyed them. And I borrowed them on Libby to read on my Kindle. The third one just came out and the waitlist on Libby is atrocious. It's months. So I wound up just ordering all 3 of them because shelf trophies, right? So that has been what I have been up to lately, and I really appreciate you spending this time here with me today. I really appreciate you if you have stuck around till the end. That means so much to me, and I truly appreciate every like, and if you would subscribe, it would mean the world to me as I'm trying to build my channel. And I just get so excited every time I see my subscriber count grow, and I love interacting with you guys in the comments, and it just makes my entire day. So if you would consider subscribing to see more videos from me, that would mean so much. I am working on some knitting vlogs that I'm excited about. Of course, I'm going to hopefully do another podcast. My goal is to get that done within 2 weeks. So I appreciate you guys coming back and watching another video of mine. I do have one more knitting podcast that I had filmed like about 5 weeks ago on my channel. If you've not seen that, I would absolutely love it if you would go check that out as well, and then subscribe so you can look forward to the next one in 2 weeks. I promise. I will see you guys next time. Thanks.